Welcome back to Pressers by FedNet, where news conferences from the United States Congress become podcast episodes for your listening on your time. Senate leadership held weekly news conferences on May 12th. Majority Leader John Thune fielded questions from reporters about National Police Week and border security, and using reconciliation to fund immigration enforcement and a White House project. The following material is protected by copyright.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Most of us, or at least all of us here, and I think a lot of people this week are celebrating National Police Week. It's the week when we honor those who serve us in law enforcement. And I think it's safe to say that we need law enforcement officers in this country. We need them to apprehend violent criminals. We need them to keep our border safe, to ensure that our immigration laws are being enforced, to protect these buildings. We need law enforcement officers. And tragically, this calendar year already, there have been 38 law enforcement officers who have been killed in the line of duty. And so this is a week when we honor them and we express our gratitude and appreciation to them and to their families for all that law enforcement does in this country to keep our country and our communities safe. The Democrats, on the other hand, as has been very clear for some time, seem to be very comfortable with allowing this defund law enforcement, defund police movement with which they've been associated for some time now to continue, and have blocked funding for the Department of Homeland Security, for ICE, for Customs and Border Patrol, the folks who keep our border safe and secure, and have been blocking it now for several months. And as a consequence, we will have to move forward, and we will next week, with the Secure America Act, which is a bill that will fund those critical law enforcement agencies and ensure that they're funded not only today, but into the future through the duration of President Trump's term. So, like I said, I think it's shameful that we are even having to have a conversation like this, but we have a Democrat Party that has embraced the ideas of open borders and defunding the police. And as a consequence of that, we're having to deal in a way that allows us to do this with Republican votes, because Republicans have law enforcement's back, and we will do everything that we can to ensure that they have all they need to keep our country, our border, and our communities safe. Yeah.
Yeah, David, thank you. So you just had a lunch for that Secret Service director had joined. Can you shed some light on what the conversation was, and also where you think your conference is with regard to giving $1 billion for the border?
Right. So the question I think that he was addressing was how is the money going to be used, the $1 billion. And so he walked through the various categories, and about 20% of that is going to be used to secure the modernization of the East Wing. Most of it's going to be used for other purposes, training facilities, for technology, lots of other things that law enforcement, particularly in this case the Secret Service, needs to ensure that they keep our president and other top officials safe. So it was a good back and forth, a good discussion, and obviously we had a lot of questions that were asked by our colleagues, just to get the details and precision as much as possible about how dollars are going to be used. And I think that the director did a very good job of laying it out and developing the case for why these resources need to be used to update, modernize, and make sure the security service is capable of doing its job. Or Secret Service, I should say. Yeah.
Are you confident that the $1 billion for ballroom security, White House security, will survive a Byrd rule challenge in front of the parliamentarian?
Well, we're having those discussions. As you all know, the parliamentarian who evaluates any proposal under reconciliation, we have a back and forth, and that's underway right now. So we are having the, quote, Byrd scrub and making the arguments in front of the parliamentarian. The Democrats obviously doing their best to try and undermine anything that we're trying to accomplish here. But I'm pretty confident based on past experience, because we dealt with this significantly, in a significant way, I should say, last summer during the Working Families Tax Cuts legislation. Some of these funding issues came up then, and there was a formula, frankly, that was put in place by the Democrats with the two reconciliation bills that they did when they had unified control of the government, that has given us the roadmap, if you will, to get this done. So I'm confident that we will be in good shape. but that process right now is underway.
Where are Senate Republicans at currently on getting the Save America Act passed? There was quite a bit of momentum on that a few weeks back. It seems like it sort of dwindled despite overwhelming support from the American people. Where do you stand on that currently? Would you reconsider getting rid of the filibuster to get it across the finish line?
We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We called it up on the floor March, I think, 17th. We were on it for several weeks and had a very spirited debate. In fact, I think with the exception of maybe a couple of Republican senators, made more speeches on the floor in support of the SAVE Act than almost any other senator. And we had some votes on it. And we voted on the narrow issue, which is the most popular one, of voter ID. And we put the Democrats on the record. Every single Democrat voted against it. We added, and one of the other elements, also popular, was whether or not biological boys ought to play in girls' sports. We had that vote, and every Democrat voted against that as well. So we've taken what I think are probably the two issues, in my view, that have the broadest public support and put the Democrats on record, and every single one of them voted against it. So we'll look for opportunities to get other votes. There was a vote on the budget resolution, an amendment that Senator Kennedy offered that didn't even get 50 votes on the floor. And so we're continuing to look for opportunities to advance that legislation. Obviously, it's something that I support. I think we all support, and we think it's something that the American people are broadly supportive as well.
There's ballroom fighting between the courts about whether or not the ballroom can be constructed, and they've been asking for some kind of congressional authorization to move forward with the courts have. Do you consider this $1 billion in this reconciliation bill to be the congressional authorization that the courts would need to be able to go forward with the construction of the ballroom with these things?
If this gets litigated, you're talking about?
Yeah, well, so if this gets passed, do you see this as the congressional authorization needed that would be good enough
The courts.
to be able to be okay with going forward with constructing the ballroom?
Well, I mean, I think that the ballroom is being financed privately, but the security associated with it is, I think, represents about 20% of what this request was. This Secret Service request, which frankly does fit perfectly within the confines of the legislation on the floor because it's the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction. Most of that's going to go to other things. It's going to be used for training. It's going to be for updates in technology, for the number of the protectees that they have to deal with is ensuring that they have the resources to cover those people. So it's a request, much of which would be dealt with during the normal appropriations process, but because the Democrats won't allow for a normal appropriations process, is being done through reconciliation. But my assumption would be that if Congress authorizes something like this, that I assume the courts would uphold it. It's essentially us Republicans doing the work that the Appropriations Committee would normally do, and did, by the way, and reported a bill out favorably, which the Democrats subsequently walked away from, and then held up and shut down the government for 60 days or thereabouts over funding for these two agencies. So again, I think this is a perfectly normal way. It's not normal, but it's certainly within the confines of what we are allowed to do to get funding for this important agency done, given the obstruction that the Democrats have posed in their unwillingness to fund law enforcement.
Are you supportive of the gas tax holiday?
Am I?
Are you supportive of it?
Well, I'm listening. I mean, I think right now, you probably know I've not in the past been a huge fan of previous attempts, although when this was tried during the Biden administration, gas prices were going up largely in response to the Biden energy policies. This obviously is a very different set of circumstances, but if the president wants to make that case, I think we're all willing to hear it. We've had some of our colleagues who've come out in support of repealing, or at least temporarily repealing, the gas tax, but obviously that has implications for the Highway Trust Fund, and so those are things that you have to take into consideration as well. And the question, of course, I always ask is, if you did, it's 18.4 cents, I think, is the federal gas tax. If you lifted that, does that ultimately get passed on to the consumer, to the customer, to the buyer out there, or does it get sucked up in the supply chain somewhere? So I think those are all fair questions to ask, but it's a conversation that I think we're willing to have, and I'm certainly willing, and I think most of our colleagues are, to hear the president's arguments if that's a case he wants to make to Congress. Thank you all. Thanks.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer criticized the reconciliation bill and inflation before Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota focused on funding alternatives in Budget Committee ranking. Member Jeff Merkley of Oregon condemned using reconciliation for regular appropriations.
Thank you for Senator Klobuchar and Merkley for being here with me today. And first, we had a great caucus, the highlight of which was the Artemis astronauts coming in and telling us their story and taking pictures with these brave Americans that brings us all together at a time of such disunity. So there was a great joy at the end of our caucus when the 4 great astronauts walked in. Now to a more serious matter. Not more serious, but less happy matter. If you want to understand Republican priorities, just look at their reconciliation bill. Prices are rising. Families are hurting. Americans know exactly who is making it worse. A CNN poll this morning said 77% say Trump has raised their costs. What is the GOP response? $1 billion ballroom. Fancy, gold-plated. It's outrageous. Only 30% of the people approve of Trump's handling of the economy. Americans are distressed. Their economic situation in 3 words: uncertainty, stress, dread. It's true. Families gather at the dinner table after a meal and dread looking at the bills and saying, how are they going to pay this one and not this one? Which one should they pay? Which one shouldn't they pay? And when you think of the needs, for instance, of your kids or maybe your elderly parents and you can't really do what's needed for them, it's dread and ache. What are Trump and the Republicans doing about these awful conditions? Not lowering grocery costs, not lowering gas prices or housing or electricity or health care costs. Nope. What are they doing? Instead of cleaning up the chaos they created, Republicans are pushing a bill that pours billions more into Trump's raids and masked agents and sticks taxpayers with a bill for Trump's $1 billion ballroom. $1 billion ballroom. These are the ballroom Republicans. At the very moment Americans are pleading for relief, Republicans are telling them, pay for Trump's palace first. This bill has $0 to lower costs for families. Here's their second reconciliation bill. It's their second chance to show what they got. They got nothing for the American people and a ballroom for Donald Trump. The bill has $0, as I said, for reducing costs to families, but somehow comes up with $1 billion for Trump's vanity project. Trump said not one penny of federal money would be used for the ballroom. Well, give me a break. Another lie. There's lie after lie after lie, and the American people are wise to it. These Republicans, these ballroom Republicans, are choosing Trump's chandelier over your child care, Trump's ego over your electric bill, Trump's palace over the people's priorities. Did everyone hear that alliteration? Americans want relief. Americans are answering and saying, give us relief. But the Republicans just say, we were going to give you a ballroom. That's not leadership. That's Versailles economics, brought to you by the ballroom Republicans. Democrats will fight this bill tooth and nail. We're already filing bird rule challenges. We'll offer amendments, and we'll force Republicans to vote again and again on one simple question. Are you with working families, or are you with Trump's ballroom? Americans don't want a ballroom blitz. They want Congress to bring the cost down. And on the war powers vote tomorrow. Tomorrow, Republicans face another major choice. For the 7th time, Senate Democrats will force a vote on our war powers resolution to withdraw American troops from hostilities with Iran. This is the first vote since Trump's war crossed the 60-day threshold under the War Powers Act. Once the 60-day clock runs out, the President has 2 choices: get authorization from Congress or end the hostilities. Donald Trump's done neither. He has dragged America into an illegal, costly war with no authorization, no clear objective, No end in sight. The administration can play word games all it wants. They call it a skirmish, a mini war, a blip, a love tap. They said this is a love tap. Give me a break. This is a war. You just can turn on your television, look into your iPhone, and you'll see it's a war. And Hegseth just said it out loud again. Quote, "We are 74 days into this." That was his quote. And Americans are paying for it. Service members are in harm's way. Families are getting hit at the pump. And gas prices are now over $4.50 a gallon. Trump started this war, and families are paying for it every time they fill up at the tank. Republicans will have their 7th chance to do the right thing, the first since the 60-day deadline passed. They can stand up and do their job for their constituents. They can protect our service members. They can help stop the chaos driving up costs. Or they can keep backing Trump's war. There are no excuses left. No president should be able to drag this country into war alone. Not now, not ever. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Chuck. So this morning, the inflation report was out, and inflation rose 3.8%, the highest of Donald Trump's presidency. Energy prices are through the roof. Groceries are up. Housing is up. Prices are so high that for the first time in years, they've wiped out the wage growth that Americans have earned. I was just on a tour of western Minnesota in towns from Marshall to Litchfield to Wilmer. They may not just roll off your tongue, but I can tell you right now the last thing that those people want funded right now is a ballroom. I met with them about child care, businesses who are going to be unable to hire employees. They want to hire them. The employees want to work for them, but they don't have child care. Gas prices now in Minnesota that have tended to be a little lower than the rest of the country, but they've now gone up over $4. Diesel prices up over $5. Farmers already hit by the tariffs. Now it costs more to bring their goods to market. And now you have fertilizer prices, and I'm going to have to leave right after this because Senator Bozeman and I are doing a hearing on fertilizer prices. 50% of the urea that goes into fertilizer goes through the Straits of Hormuz. 30% of the ammonia, that's another ingredient, goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Then you add to that the tariffs on fertilizer with other countries. You can imagine what's happening. As I've told you before, as one farmer called it, it is a perfect storm of ugly. So what do we have before us? Are we working on that? No. It's another reconciliation to write yet another blank check for ICE. $70 billion plus this money for the ballroom. They want to spend this money on ICE, and I don't think they must be talking to the people that I'm talking to out in these small towns, because I can tell them what $70 billion would pay for. 200,000 local law enforcement officers for 3 years. Having talked to local sheriffs, that's something that people need. Extending the health care premium tax credits for 2 years, not just 1 year, 2 years. Providing seniors with dental, vision, and hearing coverage through Medicare for an entire year. Building 700,000 affordable homes. That's what we could do with that $70 billion. And providing child care for 3.5 million children. So the question before us is simple. Where do you want to spend that money? On a gilded ballroom or on health care? On ICE, when they won't even do any reforms and they got this huge increase that made ICE bigger than the Marines and bigger than the FBI, do you want to spend more on them or do you want to spend it on housing? The American people have answered, and that is why the president's approval ratings are lower than they've ever been, and so many polling places have had to actually add a quintile to where he stands on running the economy, because it is now in the low 30s. With that, I turn it over to Senator Merkley.
Well, the families of Oregon and America, they're pressed to the wall. I held 9 town halls throughout eastern Oregon over the break, and people are pretty unhappy. They're unhappy that in Oregon, gas is over $5 a gallon. Diesel's over $6 a gallon. They're unhappy that the health care costs went up and that the tax credits that helped them pay for it went away. They're unhappy that the groceries are up. They are unhappy about the cost of rent and home ownership going up. They're unhappy because they are pressed to the wall. And what is the Republican answer to all of this? The ballroom boondoggle. A Louis XIV massive edifice that turns the White House into an auxiliary dwelling unit. This is hardly the vision for a democratic republic, possibly the vision for a dictator, possibly the vision for a strongman, possibly the vision for an authoritarian state, but not a vision for a democratic republic. And the rest of their bill doesn't do a damn thing for those health care, gasoline, housing, grocery costs, or inflation going up at 3.8%, the highest rate in 3 years. There's something else going on here that's important to address. The Republicans are turning reconciliation into an appropriations bill process. You know, reconciliation was passed by every single senator voting for it. Not one was against it. Why? Solely it was reserved for reducing deficits. Well, Republicans nuked it. They did a nuclear option back in 1996, and they said, you know what? We can now use this to increase costs, increase deficits rather than decreasing them. A massive violation of how 100 senators had come together. And they did that so they could do tax bills. But now, tax bills that gave away our treasury, the richest Americans, but now they're proceeding to say, we will just do regular appropriation bills. We are going to fund ICE and CBP, a massive amount, even though ICE and CBP are already sitting on $103 billion of unobligated funds, funds that will never be exhausted during this coming financial year. And they're doing it for this ballroom boondoggle. Recognize that neither of these was essential, $103 billion of unobligated funds for ICE and CBP. And why not go through the regular appropriations process if you want to build a ballroom? Well, so this is something that we will see reverberating for years to come, the steady destruction of the norms and processes of the Senate, destroying bipartisan collaboration on spending bills. An important point to note. But more important at this moment, all this being done not to give a single penny to help a single family on a single issue where they're pressed to the wall.
Thanks, Jeff. Questions? Yes.
Thank you. What is your level of confidence today that you'll ultimately get 51 votes to either remove or redirect ballroom funding, since that's clearly a focus of Democrats?
Look, the bottom line is this ballroom is a disgrace. The Republicans know it. Let's see if they have the guts to do what they know is right, both substantively and politically, and tell Trump we don't need a damn ballroom.
Senator Sherman, would you support suspending the federal gas tax to help Americans afford their bills?
Look, Americans need real relief. 18 cents isn't enough. If Trump wants to give real relief to Americans, end the damn war, that's $1.50. It's a lot more than 18 cents. Yes. You got to speak a little louder.
In light of the voting rights decision before the break and the redistricting wars, where does voting rights and electoral reform fit into the Senate Democrats' strategy as you all try to go back?
We already have task forces meeting with outside groups, lawyers, and we are red teaming anything they might do. Trump knows he's going to lose this election because he's so out of touch with the American people. So he's going to try to steal it. He tried one way in 2020. He's going to try many ways now. We are prepared, and we're going to fight him and succeed every step of the way. Yes?
Senator, are you going to vote for the Kennedy resolution tomorrow to prevent senators from being paid during the government shutdown?
Yes.
Do you expect that to pass?
I'm going to vote for it, and I think it has a lot of support. Okay. Yes. Back there. Yes. Yeah. You.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Senator Schumer. I wanted to ask a little bit about crypto legislation. I know you had a meeting with some of the Senate Democrats about it today. finish line, or if there are enough concerns that you're just hoping to
Look, we'd like to see a good crypto bill pass, and our senators on the Banking Committee and on the Ag Committee are working diligently towards that goal. They're making good progress, but we're not there yet. Thank you, everybody. Go Knicks. They got plenty of extra points. They're doing good. I love the Knicks. Who can name the 5 great Knicks of 1977?
Walt Clyde Frazier.
Keep going.
That's all I got.
Oh, jeez. Willis Reed at center. A senator was forward.
Bill Bradley.
Another senator, and another non-senator was forward, too. DeBuscher. And Earl DePearl. Did you name Earl DePearl or Clyde Frazier?
Frazier.
Okay, then Earl DePearl. That's who they are.
Thanks for listening. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited.